everyone. Welcome to Intelligent Automation Simplified. IA Simplified is an RPA Jargon Busters podcast series where we showcase industry experts to discuss intelligent automation and its impact on SME and mid-market financial services, healthcare, and other related fields. I'm your host, Tolani Jaiye-Tikolo, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about something quite interesting. It's not an unusual topic, but I think just the way the industry's been evolving, it's something that everyone needs to talk about. And what we're going to be talking about is it's been specially curated. So the topic is what the heck is intelligent automation center of excellence, and how do I build one? And as part of this conversation, Alexander Leonida will be here with me, and it will be discussing, throwing some insight and telling us all wonderful things about Intelligent Automation CoE. And just a brief intro about my guest. Alexander is the founder and CEO of SilkFlo. SilkFlo is a SaaS platform that allows automation teams to qualify, manage, and measure their intelligent automation initiatives. So I know Alexander's probably going to mention one or two things about SilkFlo, but Alexander, welcome to IA Simplified and thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tolani, and thank you for the great intro. I hope this will be a practical session.
It will be. And just as we have started, could you give us a little bit about, just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from London, United Kingdom. For the last 5 years, I've been helping companies around the world save millions of pounds on automating business processes using all this new technology that they call intelligent automation. And now, currently, leading my own startup, which helps, like you said, COEs with pipeline management, analytics, and hopefully putting people first.
I love that. That was very beautiful, Alexander. And I think this brings me up to my other question. We've been connected for a while on LinkedIn. We have had calls. We've had video calls. We've talked about COE management and all of that in the past. And I think one thing that really did do a number on me was, the whole idea of the SilkFlo. I think that you went from, going into consulting, then went into, at some point, we were in stealth mode before it became, opened. And, just walk us through that. What was the inspiration behind, the whole SilkFlo and helping automation teams?
I guess it's the same story with any kind of startup founder who tries to solve a problem. So over the years, I mentioned, I was doing my own consulting. I've been part of many fantastic automation projects. I've seen my fair share of failures and successes. And it's common knowledge that over 70% of automations actually fail to achieve any value or ROI. So I saw a gap in the market for a tool that helps the COE team increase success of intelligent automation by fixing some of the main problems, things like the operational aspect, the culture aspect, pipeline management, prioritizing the right processes, gaining visibility, and just trying to put people at the heart of change. So then after that, sorry,
join this.
Yeah, cool. So I joined Founder Institute. So obviously I had this idea, I wanted to make it happen, and I didn't know how to, right? It was all new. So I joined the Founder Institute, they're the world's largest pre-seed accelerator. It was a grueling 4-month course where I think there was 360 startups that applied, and only less than 16 actually managed to make it through that 4-month course. And it really just kickstarted SilkFlo. I met my co-founder, who, funny enough, I actually used to work with back at Deloitte. And we've built something that I think provides real value to the industry.
I love that. That was beautiful. Just seeing how this all came together. And I think this kind of leads up to another question for us. We've talked about the Center of Excellence. I think Center of Excellence is not really new. If you think about it, there's been several Center of Excellence in the past. And I think as of 2016, a lot of people were talking about having a robotic process automation center of excellence, but now things are evolving into the all intelligent automation space. So, what really is the intelligent automation center of excellence?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, rightly so, that series or knowledge centers have been around for many years, right? Decades. Different fields such as marketing, automotive, pharmaceuticals, and finance. And really, it's just a highly skilled team that works together to break down knowledge, support, build a community, discover, implement, and in this case, use automation technology. I think everyone really starts off with an RPA CoE, as RPA is usually the foundation of an automation initiative. And as the CoE grows, as it matures, as it adds new technologies to its toolkit, things like IDP, process mining, machine learning, chatbots, and so on, it then starts to, meet more use cases, it starts to achieve more end-to-end automation, and that's when it really matures into what they call an intelligent automation CoE. So yeah, I mean, establishing one really helps, especially if you get it right from the get-go. It helps you to operate, monitor your initiatives efficiently. It helps you gain transparency, understand what's going on, and actually truly scale the right way. And hopefully avoid some of the errors and pitfalls that everyone seems to come across.
So, just judging by your article where you've demonstrated there are several COE models, you talked about centralized, you talked about hybrid, you talked about federated. Then let's start off with the centralized. How does a centralized intelligent automation center of excellence look like?
Sure. So centralized is really the starting point, right? It's what we recommend everyone to start off with, especially if they're getting started with intelligent automation. In a centralized governance structure, a central team handles all the RPA development, the discovery, installation, documentation, best practices, testing, delivery, pretty much everything is all handled by that one central team. It's fantastic when you're trying to really understand and standardize your best practices, and it really sets the foundation for the later models, such as federated or hybrid. It doesn't necessarily scale well because eventually that team is going to be overburdened. They might not have the bandwidth to deal with all of the organization's automation needs. But they can develop, they can design repeatable structures, and really put the real foundation in place. Then when it gets to the federated, which is the next level up, you start to get to more mature. So the CoE capabilities start to develop into small groups, and each group is like in close proximity to business units, which really actually helps scale automation across the business, because each of those federated CoEs have particular knowledge on that area. So marketing CoE knows exactly what needs to be automated, how to go about finding all the stakeholders. It implements its own best practices on how to do said tasks. And it really does give them a greater ownership of their own decisions, which again helps with the scale. I guess the only issue of that is it can be difficult to have each of the CoEs following the same route, which we'll get onto, I guess, later. Moving further, you've got the hybrid model, which is like a mix of the centralized and the federated. So you still have one central CoE, but the CoE is taking less of a development role and is stepping back and doing more community building, support, best practices, guidelines. But then you still have those federated series in a sense, still connected to the series, so they still share best practices. The communication lines are more clear, but they still the business units still regain their own ability to make their own decisions. It's kind of like the best of both worlds, and it really the central series team still retains some ownership and responsibility, but it's it's the ideal scenario. It's just really hard to implement.
Great. I think this sort of brings me to my other question. I'm glad you kind of went through the sequence. And I've always had issues with, having the federated model, or I just feel like we are decentralized in that sense. And it tends to build up in terms of the total cost of ownership. I just feel that the total cost of ownership will be more from that federated perspective because everyone has separate priorities which they're trying to fulfill, and there is no competing priorities. So everyone will do according to their priorities. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good one. So obviously, both the federated and hybrid models, they require time. They require time to set up and train the first few federated teams on the best practices from the centralized model. And obviously, the series now split between delivery of solutions and then moving towards a more support and onboarding of the new federated series, right? And then eventually, it takes a full step back on the hybrid version. For the TCO's perspective, it's I guess Sun Tzu once said, management of the many is the same as management of the few, right? Um, it's hard to really calculate that, and I don't think anyone's done it properly. Communication, I guess, is the most important factor in order to reduce the TCO, total cost of ownership. So the COE should ideally meet on a regular basis to discuss things like new updates to any platforms they're using, any related applications, brainstorm on use cases, marketing, especially if they're trying to evangelize across the business, which I've got an article about that, which you can check out after this. And then also connecting the different series together to, who may be looking at similar automations within different groups. I think one of the hardest parts of that part is also working out the kinks of things like access requests, machine provisioning, onboarding processes of new employees, especially if each business unit has their own way of doing things, right? Another way to keep the TCO down, I guess, reusability, making sure that there's a central repository where they can share reusable automations and packages to kind of speed up development, reduce delivery times. Central place for documentation is still, I guess, useful. And I think that's pretty much all I've got for that one. It's one of those where I don't think anyone's done it properly. Or at least I've not seen anyone do it properly. And there's always going to be some conflict. And that's where I guess good change management comes in and good communication practices.
That's very interesting. The fact that you mentioned, having some governance structure centralized where they can all take from best practices or build quite similarly and all that. I think the all structure sometimes it depends on the organization itself. Like for example, I'd suppose for a global firm, they might have some federated services, or they might have a shared services model, something of that sort. I think it all has to do with the organizational model and all that, which is quite interesting. And this sort of leads me to another question in terms of the COE. We've talked about it. It could be federated, it could be centralized, but where does this really sit for any COE? Should this COE sit within IT? Should it sit within the business unit? Should it sit in shared services? Where does this really sit from your experience?
Oof, I think that's the $1 million question. Some people will say it's perfectly fine to sit in business. Some people will say IT. If it sits in the business, it's usually finance that owns it because they have control of the budgets and so on. And I guess they also have some of the biggest use cases and the most use cases. Where I've seen it have the most effect is with IT. I know some people could say IT can be a blocker with all of the regulations and all of the gates that you have to go through in order to get any kind of automation out. But they have the oversight of the kind of future of the applications of the business. They have the bigger picture, and with their governance and support, I really believe it's the best way for automation series to scale. There's also the security aspect, right? IT are more familiar with that and more conscious about that than, say, the business. So yeah, I would definitely suggest IT, but then that's just
It's just preference. I see. I see what you're doing there, right? And it's a
I'm
preference.
not advising anyone, but I'm just saying.
That's interesting. And when you think about intelligent automation, there's a plethora of technologies. You have RPA, and you can have process mining or whatever the case might be. How do you think organizations can consolidate their effort? And I'd come back to other questions, but I think let's start off with consolidating their technology effort. How do you think they can do that?
I guess it just goes back to the COE model that you choose. If you have a centralized one, it's a lot easier to do so because the communication lines are really close. As you get to the federated model, they can be separated, and you might find some business units using different technologies if it's not tracked properly, and they don't, like I said, have those meetings, those regular communication lines. But having a central repository for those different technologies that are being used across the business is very helpful. Having like a knowledge base where you can share your learnings, your failures with different business units that might be looking into a similar or a previously done automation using those technologies. Regular meetups to go through workshops and training as well. Yeah, it's one of those things where it depends on the maturity of the organization. I would say start off with one or two technologies to get your feet wet, and then work your way up to more advanced ones where you can start doing real end-to-end automation.
There's another thing that it's probably it's a brain teaser now, right? I thought about something while you were speaking, so it's quite interesting. So a few years ago, I did see another model come up, and this was in terms of managed services.
All
So
right.
might have, let's say, Deloitte have a center of excellence, and they were, different organizations were using the them really as the center of excellence kind of thing. Have you come across something like that?
Yeah, so like a Siri as a service. Yeah, I've seen a few companies try and do that, and you know what? It's I think it's becoming more and more common where businesses want to get started with intelligent automation. They want to do it properly, and similar to any kind of new technology, where you start off with proof of concepts and so on, and then they start outsourcing the work. Right? I've come across a lot of companies like that where they don't actually have an in-house RPA team or AI team or whichever. They actually outsource all of the work, and it's just managed by an internal project manager or IT lead. We're seeing a lot more automation as a service models or coming across, and it only made sense that a center of excellence model as a service or a center of excellence as a service is coming out. I don't know. It's one of those where it just depends on the company itself. If you're confident that you can do it yourself and you have the resources, you have the ability to recruit the right people, go ahead with building it in-house. You'll save a lot of headache. You'll keep that knowledge within the business. So if anything does go wrong in the future, or you look to, the technology world is always changing. Having that knowledge in-house is always a useful thing to have. You're not beholden to a third party, or you don't have that third party risk, I'd say. But if you're looking to maybe start off and learn how to do it properly, and you find a really good partner that can help you along the way, I would definitely suggest teaming up with them, learning as much as you can. Make sure there's a handover. That's all I would say. Make sure there's a good handover so that you can build your own center of excellence if needed in future, and they're more than happy as a trusted partner to help you along that journey.
I think I want to change the tone of the conversation. I want to talk about two important things. One is, building initiatives within the enterprise. Another thing is governance structure. I know we've touched on governance a little bit here and there, but let's touch up with the initiatives. How would you think that, or what's the best way for organizations to start, trying to build their demand pipeline as part of their center of excellence activities?
Sure. There's the traditional approach, right? So you've got the top down, bottom up. So the top down being, you get all of the major key stakeholders of different departments together. You'd educate them on RPA or whatever technologies you're using. Showcase the benefits, the use cases, how other companies in your industry have done the same thing and the benefits that they've received. Yeah, a lot of education, because a lot of these people are quite senior, obviously, and holding workshops with them, brainstorming sessions, and even having them take online courses I've seen as well. That was quite funny. That took a long time to actually return any benefit. And then the bottom-up approach. So obviously that kind of trickles down a little bit, and it's not the only, it's not the best way to do it on its own. Pairing that with a bottom-up approach, so focusing on the real human aspect of automation, the people that you're automating for, right? The people that you're looking to, the employees whose lives you're looking to make better. They're the process experts. They do the processes every single day. There are some schools of thought where they don't know everything and some things might be missed. Yes, that's true. But with a good business analyst, a good relationship, you'll be able to weed out those processes that are causing them the most pain. By training them, there are things like yellow belts, Lean Six Sigma. It's always a useful one for any company to have. It really helps employees understand and spot opportunities themselves. Having a way for them, similar to the old office suggestion boxes, right? Having a way for them to submit their own ideas digitally. So that's similar to also like IT ticketing. So having a way for them to submit their own ideas, to get their voices heard, to like, share, comment, that kind of stuff, make it more collaborative. That's very useful in a bottom-up approach and can really help get the engagement that you need to drive the intelligent automation initiative. But then pairing that with a third approach, with the technology side. So you've got new tools like task mining, process mining, process discovery, and so on. That, I think when you get to that stage, I probably wouldn't suggest doing it straight away because you need to learn your lessons. When you get to that stage, you really have a good trifecta to have like a continuous discovery and continuous automation. So yeah, paired together, those three, top down, bottom up, and the technology, I think you'll have a winning combination to have a continuous pipeline.
Well, now I've asked you a question. I really want to ask you other questions as well, and I want you to think deeply about this question. And I know you've talked about the initiatives top down, bottom up, and all that. Do you think, right? Think carefully. Do you think citizen developers have a role to play as part of this initiative thinking? Do they have a role to play?
Developers?
Citizen developers.
Citizen developers. All right, that's a hot topic right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I think the world is going into like a low code, no code trend. I don't see that dying anytime soon. I think it's here to stay. Companies like Microsoft, I'm allowed to name names. I guess we've already named a few. Companies like Microsoft and a few other low code tools now they're really being pushed out. IT see it as shadow IT, and they are kind of correct. It's getting harder and harder to govern what's being built by these citizen developers. So I think not having a citizen developer mindset or not having a citizen developer game plan is going to be a big no-no and a big failure for a lot of companies. It's going to be a really rude awakening. So yeah, best thing to do is preempt that and actually focus on creating a citizen developer training plan, go through education, realizing best practices. And that's why I said, try to focus on IT being the head of CoE. When you have so many people, especially those who don't have as much knowledge or haven't, probably studied or a lot of experience with actual coding, interfacing with so many different systems and automating things here, there, and everywhere, you may have issues with security, sensitive information being shared where it shouldn't, certain systems being accessed by a robot when there's no permissions there, regulatory issues as well, which need to be thought about. So governance of citizen automation programs is going to be key in the near future. Best way to do that is to preempt it and work it into your strategy.
Brilliant. And this brings us to the other question, governance. What's your take on having, I'm kind of just thinking, how do I phrase this question? I want
Sure.
it to be, I want it to be a shocker, right? So I'm trying to think. So I want to think about
Trying to make
governance.
it hard for me.
I'm putting you on the hot seat, all right? I'm going to make it. So I'm thinking in terms of governance. As part of the Center of Excellence, I assume there'd be some reasonable amount of governance. What's your take on the required governance that you think that you know that a Center of Excellence must have?
In general, like the required governance needed? Yeah, sure. So you need knowledge. You need a special roadmap, a certain roadmap, right? And you can find this online. A lot of the automation vendors have their own models, but similar to like the normal SDLC lifecycle, right? You need to have like a discovery. You need to have checkpoints. You need to have the proper assessment so that you're making sure the right processes are going through. You need to make sure the business cases align with strategic objectives and that they actually make financial or if not financial, at least productive sense. And then when you're actually building them, you've obviously got to have your own technical gates in place to make sure that you've got your code reviews, you've got best practices on things to do like credentials and so on. And then even when you go live, even when you are monitoring and you've got that the nurturing phase afterwards, just having a roadmap, having it all cleared out and spelled out so that whether you're having a centralized model or a federated model or a hybrid model, everyone knows roughly, because not everyone would follow the same model or the same roadmap, but everyone knows the standard practices in place, and that should hopefully reduce some risk.
It didn't look like I was putting you on the spot. So it was very good answer.
Thank
So
you.
I know I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to try and wrap things up as soon as possible. But before I just kind of wrap up the podcast, I really wanted to talk about SilkFlo as a product.
Okay.
I know I gave the brief intro. It does allow people to measure their intelligent automation initiatives. You can track and all that. Can you give me more context about the platform itself and what are the key deliverables of that platform?
Right. Thank you. So SilkFlo is basically everything whatever a CoE needs to actually get started, right, and actually scale all the way up to enterprise intelligent automation. So you've got your intake, you've got the ability for employees across the business to log in, collaborate, share ideas. All of that is then kind of assessed by our internal algorithms and some machine learning in place. That is then taken to the CoE. CoE have a visibility over the whole pipeline, similar to the ticketing systems I mentioned. It's easy for them to review the ideas, take them through the SDLC kind of life cycle from idea all the way to bot. And there's a key business case element as well, which allows them to showcase and get buy-in from stakeholders and then upper management to go ahead with the really big processes and the really big changes. And then there's also the tracking. So just making sure that the benefits are tracked, or the estimated benefits versus realized. So yeah, it's pretty much everything you need to really create to run your CoE.
Interesting. Oh yeah, is there a bit of transparency from the top to the bottom? What I mean by that is, can the whoever is funding the COE or funding the projects and all that, can they go into SilkFlo and kind of go, oh, these are the projects that are in the pipeline. These are things that I can, this is how the projects are moving, what stage of the project, see all that visibility and transparency. Is that what SilkFlo will be trying to achieve?
Yeah, it's already there. So we have like user role management. You have obviously different user roles, and the account manager can control who sees what. So obviously you can't have employees seeing all of the financial details. It's not conducive, I guess. Or how many hours that would be saved, or FTE is always a scary number, right? You don't want them seeing that. But then again, obviously, you've got your core CoE team. They can see everything they need to do, everything they need to see. Sponsors can then log in and see all the reporting that they need. It kind of saves you having to deal with the spreadsheets. Like as a BA previously, sometimes it would take hours, if not weeks, to build those spreadsheets. I had one client saying it used to take months, or no, literally a month to, from the request for like a performance report to they actually got it. And by that time, obviously the information was old. So yeah, it kind of basically just negates the need to have spreadsheets or separate systems, forms, SharePoints, Google Drives, or whatever. Everything's stored in one central location, easy to manage, easy to view, and just provides that transparency, like you mentioned.
I have just one more question for you, and that's, what's your advice for SMEs and large enterprises looking to invest in intelligent automation in the next 12 months?
In the next 12 months, I would say it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? A lot of companies jump into it and they fail fast. Can be a good thing, especially in the startup world, but in the enterprise world or the business world, it can be quite disastrous. So do your research, read about all the different technologies out there, use cases, pros and cons. If you haven't got time, find a really trusted partner that can actually help you out, and who's done it before and has those war wounds. That can be a faster way to do it. Understand your business. Basically, from its processes to its people and their appetite for change. Start small. Once you get the hang of it, build a CoE to really maximize your investment and scale effectively. And then, yeah, I think once you've got those core fundamentals, then you'll be on your way to intelligent automation.
Absolutely. Thanks for that advice. It was really timely. How do people reach out to you? How can people reach out to you, Alexander?
Sure. So that's easy. Just find me on LinkedIn, or you can reach me on alexander@silkflo.com. I'm sure we'll be doing more of these sessions, so feel free to just reach out.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on IA Simplified. I do appreciate your time, and it's a good time to relax for Friday. So thank you for that. And for
Yeah,
others,
this isn't. I was just going to drink the water, but this isn't beer, by the way. Like,
you're very lucky. I have a mug that I rarely show on camera. It's just I got it as a present from the last place I was working, and it was, I hate everyone I work with. So I'm so I got that as a present because I used to rant a lot. Like every time I was, I used to rant every time there was a project delay and all that, and I as a present. But since then, It's my favorite mug, but I can't show it on camera.
Yeah, there's some things you got to keep secret.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to wrap it up here, and a full transcription will be available online. It will be available on rpajargonbuster.com. And remember, as always, if you want to talk to someone about intelligent automation delivery and deployment for small businesses, and mid-market, feel free to reach out to me, and we'll see how we can help you there. Right? Don't worry, it's not on YouTube. Right? It will go on YouTube, but that thing people do on YouTube. I don't know what the portion is going to be in. So
Didn't know which directions. I'm like dancing here. Like, okay, it's that way. Yep, that way.
so there will be snippets online as well on LinkedIn, and we'll be going on LinkedIn Live very soon. So see you there. But until next time, stay informed.